Do you believe that Syria was a trap?
No, I don't. um, Syria was a disaster. It was a failure. I think for some people, it's really hard to admit that sometimes the good guys lose. um, and want to hear, the axis of resistance and Russia. It was clearly a disaster. And I think it has, like I said earlier, it's really greatly strengthened Israel's position. It's in the Middle East. So no, I don't see that at all. And I think all the evidence shows too that Russia in particular was trying to save the Assad government. They were bombing the attackers quite heavily, and according to some reports, they killed maybe 1,000 of them. So, and I also understand that they had rushed Wagner fighters there. They were doing what they could to save them. There was no evidence pointing to somehow, this being a trap. I don't see that at all. I just doesn't make sense on any level to me. I've heard that. I know there's some smart people that are putting forward that plan. I think like Brian Berletic, for example, but I think he's completely wrong about that.
Yeah, I think the reason that people are jumping to that conclusion, it's just hard to believe that Syria could fall to such a small fighting force. The Syrian army had 270,000 members, and HTS, 20 to 30,000, something like this. Plus, the Syrian army was backed by the Russian military, those bases there. He said
it was a small Russian fighting force. They had drawn down, after the end of the Civil War back in 2020. So there weren't a whole lot of Russians, but the Russians that were there were fighting hard.
Right. If you said that they maybe killed even 1,000 of these fighters, that's 3% of this fighting force. It just seems very difficult to believe that such a small force could have toppled this government, the whole Syrian army so quickly. And so I think that's why people are jumping to that conclusion.
Right. It is a strange event, and when things like happen, but there are all kinds of weird things happen, and so when that happens, people kind of go for these conspiracy theories. Again,
they're fun.
Sometimes they're true. But I don't see any evidence supporting it. Also, what you have to stop and ask yourself, what it is that you're asking us to believe about the Russian government and the Assad government. You're asking that they would actually subject the Syrian population to the horrors that they're being subjected to now. That they just didn't give a damn about the Orthodox Christians or the Alawites, even though, of course, the Russians are by and large Orthodox Christians, and the Assad's government was Alawite. We're seeing there already been all kinds of massacres and abuse and so forth. So you're saying that they were willing to do this, to subject this population to these horrors. For what? And again, I don't see what they achieve. I don't see it at all.
Yeah, good point. I think it's just hard. I think even HTS couldn't believe it, I think.
Yeah.
This wasn't supposed to be the outcome. It just kind of happened. So people are searching for an explanation. How could this have just disappeared? The whole country disintegrated.
Yeah. It is hard to understand. I agree. But that explanation doesn't work. It just doesn't fit with the facts.
Okay. Well, then if we say, I agree that what you say makes sense. I don't understand. What would the trap be? Is there trap chaos? But whether or not it's a premeditated trap or not, which I don't think it was either. But in a sense, do you think it could be turning into a trap for the Israelis and the Americans and Turks? Because it's a mess now on their hands.
Yeah. I really don't think it is for the Israelis. I've heard, a lot of people have argued that. But I think chaos is what they wanted. They've stated that was really their objective, and it was clear, from previous actions. Why did they support Al-Qaeda back at the beginning of the Civil War? It wasn't because they're fans of Al-Qaeda per se, but they're fans of chaos. And they knew that Al-Qaeda, was the weaker party in this conflict, could engender chaos. I think the one thing that Israel doesn't want to see is for HTS, which is, the present iteration of Al Qaeda in Syria. They don't want them to see that government really consolidate control and establish an effective Al Qaeda government. Because even though at the current stage, and actually for many years now, Al Qaeda has been working with Israel and is constantly expressing its support of Israel, and again they've backed up those expressions with real actions. I think Israel understands in the long run Al Qaeda is not their friend. Remember, it was like Bin Laden with his original statement. One of the things that he pointed to for justifying the 9/11 attacks was the treatment of the Palestinians. They're not friends of Israel. They're not friends of the Jews. And I think that Israel understands that quite well, the Israeli government. So they don't want to see, a successful HTS government there. But they're all in favor of chaos, and I think that's what they're going to get. I think that's what we're going to see. That means weakness. There's no way that any one party could actually present a threat to Israel, and Israel will be able to constantly use the chaos as they've already done to expand their borders.
Mm. Well, in a sense, I think it could be a trap in that Israel grows overconfident because it seems like they are really set on this is their window of opportunity to go after Iran. And there was supposedly some call between Netanyahu and Trump talking about Iran. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's where we're headed?
Well, it wouldn't be. Yeah, again, I wouldn't say it was a trap. Well, yeah, you're saying that it was just sort of unintentionally.
Unintentionally, it's going to be a trap for them.
I think that's Israel's main that Achilles heel all along, and we've seen it. It's just again and again. Israel holds. Well, prior to October 7th, it had all the cards, and October 7th, it could have actually used to its advantage. There was a lot of sympathy for Israel at that time, and they could have. Had a limited attack on Hamas, and they actually could have gotten many of the regional powers, other Arab states, to support them in suppressing Hamas and neutralizing the threat. And they could have strengthened their borders, and they could have ended up actually improving their standing, within the world community. But it was, their hubris and their obviously obvious expansionist ambitions. In other words, they're after a greater Israel, and when they saw it, they went for it, and that's what, and the world saw it too. And greater Israel, if that includes ethnic cleansing and genocide, so be it. That's what they've shown. They've shown that ugly face to the world, and now that Syria's fallen again, that could actually they could stop right there. They could seize a little bit of territory and stop there, but you're right, they won't. They're going to reach too far. I think they always do, and they're going to go after Iran, and that'll be a mistake. Yeah, Iran has been weakened, but Iran is still a large, militarily powerful state, and it has advantages. It is stronger than Israel in many different departments. And if it goes a war between Israel and Iran would be won by Iran. Of course, if the United States becomes involved, that could change it. But the United States would pay a huge cost. So, those facts, which we've talked about earlier, they have not changed. I know that they're saying that the destruction of the air defenses in Syria make a huge difference. I honestly don't see it. I think it's probably made it easier. No question, it's made it easier for Israel to attack Iran. But they could do it before. Remember, they had all of eastern Syria was under U.S. control, and actually the northwestern corner of Iraq, there's a Kurdish enclave. So my understanding is that in the previous attack, they went over Jordan, eastern Syria, and northwestern Iraq and fired from that. And so that hasn't changed. I don't see that they get any closer to Iraq.
Just maybe a little shorter
Yeah.
flight time, perhaps.
Yeah,
You know?
right. So, maybe there's something I don't understand, but nobody's explained to me how it makes a really big difference. Israel has claimed that it does, but I don't think it makes a really big difference. And it doesn't change the fact that, again, Iran has this sophisticated air defense that can lock onto their most sophisticated fighter jets. So, I mean, even if they do attempt to fly right into, I think last time they did attempt, like with their F-35s, to fly into Iranian airspace, but they turned around when they realized that they'd been detected by their radars.
So, Israel made this claim after the last attack that they destroyed all these Iran's air defense systems. Do you think that is it possible they're even falling victim to their own propaganda? Because we saw this happen before, that they think that, we did do a lot of damage, or they have to be aware, right, that they didn't really
You would
hit anything.
think so. Yeah. Right. Because it's funny how a lot of those claims came out like 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and like even last week, I think I saw, another claim to that effect. And nothing has been backed up by satellite photos. And that is completely unlike Israel's usual practice. When they do make a successful strike on some sort of enemy facility or whatever, they always publish the photos. They haven't, and that makes you. I'm confident. There's just no evidence that they did that. Yeah, so I don't know what they're thinking. They're probably, I'm sure the Israeli public believes it, but it's hard to believe that the IDF really believes it. Sometimes,
or the U.S., right, the Pentagon.
yeah.
As well.
So, yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. Again, he's going for it. Again, you have a different administration. We have Trump, who doesn't want this war in Ukraine, but he does want war with Iran, or he does want an attack on Iran. And he just may not listen to the cooler heads in the Pentagon and saying, hey, we can't really do this. I think he's, he may just go for it, in spite of the advice that's given to him. And Netanyahu just may think that Netanyahu may understand much better that this isn't going to work. But his calculation might be that if this fails and then Iran strikes back heavily, then we got we've drawn the United States in on our side, and we'll have to, because we'll have to escalate. And the only way to escalate is to actually increase the involvement of the U.S. So I think, again, from Netanyahu's point of view, this is great, even if we fail, even if he knows that it will fail, because that'll just suck the U.S. into this conflict.
I pray that this doesn't happen, but I'm afraid that Trump will start a war with Iran, and that will completely define his presidency. Everything else that people are talking about here, it's going to be completely overshadowed, and everything will go up in flames if he does this. So I really hope he listens to some people that are a bit saner around him.
Unfortunately, he just does. Yeah. I mean, the people that he's appointed, I think, just are almost entirely insane. Just as insane as he is on Iran. So it doesn't look very good.
It makes me wonder why there would be stories leaking out still now, you're saying 2 weeks, 4 weeks after Israel's attack, saying they knocked out these air defense systems. It's almost like they're trying to convince themselves or the United States, the clear path, just go for it.
Yeah.
But they know that it's there.
Yeah, I think that's clearly what's happening. It's, there have always been these Iran hawks within the U.S. government. They've always been there, and they've always been trying to, whatever they can do to drum up war with Iran. They do it. So earlier we had these stories about attempted assassinations or plots to assassinate Trump by the Iranians. It's just totally bogus, but it was there. But clearly these are the same people, and I think they're the ones who are coming up with the stories of the successful Israeli strike. Now, they probably understand they cannot convince the real experts within the IDF or the Pentagon, but they can convince the public, and they can convince a lot of politicians. Because a lot of these politicians, it's amazing. I find it hard to believe, but it apparently really is true. It clearly is true that a lot of them just believe what they see on TV, on CNN or Fox News. And sometimes they get these intel briefings that maybe tell them something different, maybe don't, because there's so much corruption within the intelligence services, but they seem to believe in TV. That's their reality. And so, if you get a lot of the politicians on your side, maybe that's all you need. They can override the resistance within, the military communities.
It's so crazy that these people don't have, our politicians just aren't fed reality. And
No,
they
clearly they're not.
They don't live in reality.
Yeah, and you can see it again. We see it again and again with respect to Ukraine.
Mm. So you were saying earlier that, the hubris is something that is the Achilles heel of Israel, and now they've moved into Syria, and they'll probably might bite off more than they can chew. They just keep on moving in. They have completely.
Well, I think Iran has always been is the
restraining factor.
Yeah, well, right. Well, and Iran is the more powerful party in this case. Israel is clearly much more powerful than Hamas. It's amazing that Hamas has held out so long, and it continues to inflict casualties, on the IDF. They're much more powerful than Hezbollah, and they showed it. Yeah, at the same time, Hezbollah showed, we're able to withstand the ground invasion. But they did do a lot of damage to Hezbollah. They did kill a lot of, they just completely wiped out their leadership. And I'm sure they killed a lot of soldiers, but Iran is a completely different case, and it's a much larger country, and it's got some sophisticated military technology, and it's demonstrated that. And this is a completely different ball game.